Hi, today we're going to be doing Lesson 3, Session 1. We'll be covering pages 33 and 34 in your Ready Math workbook. Today we're going to be learning how to find volume using formulas. And there's two different formulas that you're going to learn today. I'm pretty excited for this. Teaching volume is one of my favorite things to teach. So let's go ahead and turn to page 33 in your workbook. So previously, you learned how to find volume by counting unit cubes and by using addition and multiplication strategies. Now you will learn how to find volume using a formula. Use what you know to try and solve the problem below. So remember, we always have three questions that we ask ourselves. The first question is, what is the question asking? The second question we ask ourselves is, what are we trying to find out? And then finally, what is the important information? So let's go first. What is this question about? So let's go ahead and read the question. Becky uses 1-inch cubes to create a model for a small paper gift bag she is making. Her model is a rectangular prism. What is the volume of Becky's model? So the first thing that we need to do is, what is this problem about? It is about Becky, who's creating a model for a small paper gift bag. So she's not creating the gift bag, she's making a model for it. Now, second, we need to know, what are we trying to solve? So in this case, we are trying to find out what is the volume of Becky's model. That's the answer that we're going to give. And then finally, what is the important information? So again, we have our rectangular prism here. Even though there's no numbers on this rectangular prism, there is definitely some important information that we can put here, here, and here. Without having the numbers, we can figure out what they are on our own by using the unit cubes. And then finally, we cannot forget that this unit cube here tells us some very important information. It tells us what our cubic unit is that we're working with. Remember that whenever we are trying to find volume, we use the term cubic when we're talking about when we're labeling our units at the end. All right, so I'll put cubic unit. So right now, what I'd like for you to do, I'm going to read the question one more time, and then I want you to pause it and solve it the way you know how to solve it. The way we've practiced a few different methods, so do the way that is your absolute favorite. So go, let me read it, and then you can pause. Becky uses 1-inch cubes to create a model for a small paper gift bag she is making. Her model is a rectangular prism. What is the volume of Becky's model? So go ahead and pause the video here, solve it, and then come back and I'll see if you solved it the way that I did. Okay. If I were solving this, there's some information that we need to fill out before we can even begin. Because right now we have this rectangular prism, but we don't have the values or the numbers that are going to help us to be able to solve. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out, what is my length? How long is my side? So I can see that it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches long. Then I'm going to go to my width. It is 1, 2, 2 inches wide. And then I'm going to go to my height and count how many layers there are. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 inches. Because we know we're using inches because of our important information. And we know that this is 5 inches long, because each edge of one cube is 1 inch, and there are 5 cubes, so that is 5 inches. Our width is 2 because we have 2 inches, and our height is 4 because there are 4 inches. After we have that important information, we can solve it. I'm going to go ahead and solve it today without drawing a model. I'm going to first find out how many cubes are in one layer. To do that, I'm going to multiply my length times my width to tell me how many cubes are in one layer. 2 times 5 equals 10 cubes. Then I'm going to find out how many layers are there. To do this, I'm going to count how many layers I have. I have 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, 4 layers. So I have 4 layers. To find the total volume, I know that I multiply how many cubes are in one layer times how many layers there are. So my volume is equal to 10 cubes per layer times 4 layers, which equals 40 cubic. And then in this case, my unit is inches. So I'm going to write cubic inches. So to solve this problem, I found out how many cubes were in one layer, and then how many layers there were, and then I multiplied 10 times 4 to get 40 cubic inches. Did you solve it the same way I did? I don't know. It's pretty cool though. But now this was kind of a lot of work. So I'm going to show you now 2 different ways that you could solve it without going through all of these steps. Go ahead and turn to page 34. So on page 34, I just did this on the last page. If you, why don't you, so I explained how the question says explain how you can find the volume of Becky's model without counting each cube. So I showed one way. I want you to explain how you solved it. How did you find out what the total volume was without counting each cube? And write your explanation here. Go ahead and pause and do that now. All right, we're going to go ahead and go on to question number 2. Look ahead. This is giving us a little preview of what we're going to be doing over the next few days. Becky's finished gift bag is shown below. So this is the model of that gift bag that she made. As you can see, the size of her model is similar to the size of the rectangular prism that we had from the previous page. You can find the volume with a formula using the letters L, W, and H to represent the length, the width, and the height. So here you can see the length of Becky's bag is 5 inches. Over here, we knew it was 5 inches because each of these cubic units is 1 inch wide, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we also saw here that the length was equal to 5 inches. Then we looked at the width, and the width we could see there were 2 cubes, so it's 2 inches, and that is our width. And then finally, we have our height. And our height, we counted, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. And so our height, oh, I forgot the W here. Our height is equal to 4 inches. So as you can see, our model that we used on the previous problem is the same size as Becky's gift bag model. So how can we go and use these 3 values that we've been given and find out how many cubes would fill this model if we didn't want to count all of those cubes? The first way is to solve using the base of the rectangular prism. The bottom of a rectangular prism is called its base, the very bottom layer. So the base would simply be 1 layer of the rectangular prism. The letter B is used to represent the area of the base. We know to find area, we multiply the length times the width. Well, to find the area of the base is the exact same thing. We're going to multiply the length times the width, and that's going to give us the area of the base. So what they would like us to do here is to write an equation using the area of the base to find the bag's volume, then complete the volume with a letter. So here we can see that the base is just one letter. So let's go ahead and find the area of the base. So the base is equal to the length times the width. So in this case, the base would equal the length, which is 5 times the width, which is 2. So we know that the base would equal 10. So if we're looking at this expression here, or this equation here, we know that the base is equal to 10. So we're going to put that 10 right where the base is in this equation. Now, what do we multiply the base times to find out our volume? We multiply the base times the height. So this is the equation, the formula we're looking at. The volume equals the base times the height. So what is the height of our bag? 4 inches. So we're going to put a 4 there. And then to find the total volume, we simply multiply 10 times 4, which is 40. So here we have the total volume, which is 40. The B represents the base, which is the length times the width. And then what letter represents this 4? What letter would we put right here? Go ahead and do that. That's right, it's the H. So the volume formula, one volume formula is using the base of the rectangular prism, and to find that, you find your base first, which is multiplying the length times the width, and then you multiply it by how tall the figure is. It's very similar to figuring out how many cubes are in one layer, and then multiplying it by the number of layers. It's almost exactly this, well, it is exactly the same. There's one more option you have. This is still kind of a few more steps than you really have to do because you're multiplying two numbers first and then multiplying it by a third. There's another formula that you can use. Use the letters shown in the formula below to help you complete another equation for the volume of the bag. Then complete the formula. So we have volume equals length times width times, what do you think? That's right, height. So we know that our volume, well, let's do volume last. What is our length? Our length is 5. What is our width? Our width is 2. And then what is our height? Our height is 4. So we could solve this by going 5 times 2 is 10. 10 times 4 is 40. So this was using the formula volume equals length times width times height. So the really cool thing about both of these formulas is that no longer do we have to count how many cubes are in each layer and then how tall they are. We can simply just multiply without having to count all the cubes that are in the layers. So let's look at number 3. How are the two volume formulas you wrote above alike? How are they different? Go ahead and pause the video and write down what you think, and then come back and you'll check and see if you came up with the same things I did. Okay, one way that they're alike is they both use multiplication. to solve. They both get the same product, or that's the answer to a multiplication equation. They're different because one way uses base times height, and another way uses length times width times height. So you're going to get the same answer no matter which formula you use. It's really just up to your preference as to which formula speaks to you and is the way that it makes sense in your brain. You can choose whichever way you'd prefer. Now go ahead and turn to page 35. I'm going to go over the vocabulary word formula with you, and then you can continue and finish this on your own for independent practice. So what is a formula? A formula is a mathematical relationship that is shown as an equation with letters. So for example, here's a picture of a rectangular prism that has a length, a width, and a height. The formula would be volume equals length times width times height. Some examples of different formulas. I wrote out what the word was at the beginning, but you could just use just the first letter of each of those words to represent the word in the formula. So here I only used the V, but we know that that V really means volume. I just didn't write the whole word volume. So when we're trying to find the area of something, we multiply the length times the width. When we're trying to find the volume, we do length times width times height. When we are looking to find the base, it's just like finding the area. You're going to multiply the length times the width. And then the other volume formula we learned was multiplying the base times the height. Some non-examples of formulas are 2 times 4, 7 times 3 equals 2,100, 12 times 6. All three of these examples use numbers. And if you come back to the beginning, what makes a formula so cool is that it is a mathematical relationship that is shown as an equation with letters. So these are non-examples because they're not formulas. They all have an exact answer and they're always the same answer. Over here, you can put any number in for a length, any number in for a width, any number in for a height, and get a different value each time. So with that, go ahead and you may continue on and finish these your homework pages for your independent practice.